What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gaming Without Parole. This will be the third video podcast that we air. Unless it goes horribly awry, then you'll never see it.
It's also a special Mike has a cold edition. So, yeah, if I seem to be hacking or sneezing or just blowing strange things all over my hands throughout the throughout the recording, I apologize.
What kind of strange things you got going on in there?
I don't know. I couldn't see. I got a flashlight up in there, and it was a bad scene.
Wow. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Gaming Without Parole. I'm Bryan. Across from me, of course, the ever illustrious Mike Zeller. I looked up
Mike Zeller.
I looked up the meaning of illustrious just to make sure I was using it properly.
Yeah.
The answer is I'm not.
You're not?
No, because it kind of means famous.
Yeah.
You're.
I thought you were like talking me up.
I mean, I am, but realistically.
Well, yeah, no. I thought it was hyperbole for the sake of my ego.
The sort of illustrious. Mike Zeller.
Yeah. I've published a little bit. I've
Mike,
been on some websites.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. You actually have some sort of recognition where I have none.
We're working on it, though. We'll get there.
What's the opposite of illustrious?
I don't know. Infamous. It depends on which direction do you want to go.
Yeah, no, just unknown altogether.
Yeah. Obscure.
Yeah. The
Probably.
forever unknown Bryan Paul. Thanks for joining us despite your sickness.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here.
It's not like you're dying or anything.
No.
You're going to make it.
I will, probably. And I got to feed a cat down the street afterwards, so.
Right. Don't get the cat sick.
No.
So I this is going to sound like sad first, but it's not really. So when I was living in Tennessee, I had a roommate, and he was constantly telling us how his cat had feline HIV.
Oh, yeah.
Why isn't it just HIV? Why is there like a feline hepatitis? Is there a feline HPV? Is there a feline cold? Like, can you give a cat a cold?
Probably not. No, there are some. My very limited medical knowledge, most bacteria, viruses, and such are very specific to the species that they plague.
Okay.
There are a handful of things that can pass back and forth. So it's usually stuff that evolves very quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's like some animal group has a ton of it, and they're around people, and then suddenly one of the people gets sick. But that's why it's called feline AIDS, because you can't get AIDS from a cat, and you can't give AIDS to a cat.
Thank God. Based on our last couple podcasts, I was getting concerned for one of us.
Yeah. I forget who it was. I think it was my science teacher in high school told me that he watched a documentary about feline AIDS, mm-hmm. and they had apparently a fairly lengthy clip of a lion dying of feline AIDS, and he just casually drops this bomb in the middle of lessons, and he's like, "Yeah, it was pretty much the saddest thing I've ever seen." So rock salt, and just moves on with the conversation. Wow. So look up lion dying of AIDS if you just really don't want to live anymore.
Yeah, if you don't. More importantly, what do we do here, Mike? We talk about video games.
We do. We talk about video games and
in our undying obsession.
Yeah, allegedly we talk about other aspects of our lives and how we square those two, but we're usually pretty bad at that. We usually end up just talking about really, really obscure video games ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And speaking of obscure video games...
Segue.
Yes. That should be our thing. We just always have to indicate where the segue is.
We've been doing it.
Yeah, we sure should have. You should put a big thing up on the screen like blinking segue when we do that.
No, that requires more editing.
Oh, all right.
This thing's like a beast as it is.
Yeah, I do not envy you.
For so many reasons.
Yeah, so... I got a call from my dad the other day.
Oh, good.
And my dad and I are both big time thrift store shoppers. And he calls me and he said, "Yeah, I know you said you were looking for certain kinds of video games, and I found this weird this Zelda Wand of Gamelon or Gamelon. Is that something that you're interested in?" And I was like, "Yes, get that game. That's amazing." So my dad found a mint condition copy of Zelda Wand of Gamelon I think it's Gamelon for the Philips CDI for like $1 at the Salvation Army. And that's cool. And like, I've done stuff like that before too. I've found really random games. Like a couple months back, I found like Final Fantasy VII for a couple bucks at a thrift store.
Nice.
And I bring this up only because, and we kind of started talking about this before the podcast, but I was like, I want to save it for the podcast.
Sure.
It always kind of weirds me out when you find like one really rare game.
Yeah.
Like, there have been times where I'd find like a stack of kind of obscure stuff, and that makes sense because it's like, oh, some nerd died.
Like,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for passing these on.
Your death
to me.
will not have been in vain.
Right.
I'm totally gonna sell these for more money, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Go to the movies, but because you need a lot of money to go to the movies these days. But so that at least makes sense to me.
Sure.
I don't get where these, like, it always confuses me. What was this game's journey? How did one copy of...
Ooh. Pick me.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the story of this sad gamer nerd. The Philips CDI came out, and it was like $600 or $700, and he bought it because he was like, I need to play this Zelda game. And he bought the Zelda game, and he played it for 5 minutes and was like, oh my god, I've wasted so much money. And unlike me, he stopped buying games for the system because he was smarter than me. That's the whole story.
And he's just sat on a mint copy of it for like 20 years.
He was probably like, this is such crap. Because, I mean, it wasn't until recently that anybody cared about this. Like, the last, 5-6 years?
Even a little further than that. They've always been kind of rare. And I mean, nobody's ever thought they were good. But
this is
except
true.
for that one, I did read some article on... I can't remember. It might have been Hardcore Gaming, where there was a guy that was like, no, trust me, these aren't that bad. They still sounded pretty bad.
For whatever reason, there has been a renewed interest recently.
Yeah.
I've been watching YouTube channels, and they've been talking about them and playing them. And there's two very similar ones.
Yeah,
I think Gamelon.
Gamelon and Link, Mask of Evil, is it, or something like that?
Something.
Yeah.
Shit. And they're very similar. They're both side-scrolling.
Yeah.
One you play as Zelda, one you play as Link.
Yeah.
And then there's one that's like kind of a top-down that is
Yeah.
trying to be like an updated version of the original Zelda.
And that's the one that uses all the real-time video and live action and stuff.
And there, I mean, I've watched videos extensively, and it was painful watching people play. I can't imagine actually having to sit down and play.
Yeah, and that's the one. So when my dad said he'd found this for me, I poked around on eBay just to see what they were going for, and they're pretty pricey. And the one you were just talking about, the top down one, that's like a $150 game.
Wow.
Which
now I'm curious where the other ones went too.
Yeah, exactly. Like but I can't imagine, sometimes you'll come in and there'll be like a bunch of shitty games and you're like, did somebody trade in a collection and it's just already been picked over?
Right.
Where nobody would take other stuff and leave the Wand of Gamelon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not quite as expensive as the other two, but it's still like for $1, that's like a $50 game. But he said no, the system wasn't there, nothing else. It was just this one thing sitting with some of the other CDs.
Interesting.
So I always wonder about that. Like, where does that one rare game come from?
Well, so what's your plan for this one rare game? Are you going to throw it into your collection and be like, this is a random, obscure oddity that I have? Or are you going to be like, I need a CDI now?
No, this is definitely just random funny thing. I mean, maybe if I could find like a CDI emulator. Most CD-based systems are a little easier to emulate.
Yeah, just throw the CD in.
Yeah, I might take it for a whirl. But this is definitely a one-off. I think it's funny, kind of ironic purchase.
Right on. No plans on selling it.
No, although if I'm ever in desperate need of cash, that will probably be one of the first things to go.
Awesome. Dude, so we've talked a little bit about our TurboGrafx issues. You and I both have a Turbo Duo, and we each have separate. But
if we could combine them, they would be
one awesome system.
Yeah.
But and you know what? My issue is my AV out.
Yeah.
And it's really just super finicky. For the most part, if you can just nudge the cable just the right way, you'll be lucky. You probably get a few good hours before it just like totally doesn't work right. So last night I decided because I couldn't sleep. That's really what it was. It was 3:00 in the morning. I was like, I just need to play some games. I decided I was going to start pulling out some TurboGrafx games. and I nudged that AV cable just the right way. I was actually only getting output out of the right speaker.
Okay.
Which was no problem, because when I was just video capturing everything I was doing, so I split the right speaker into both speakers, and I was getting...
Yeah, it's not like a lot of those games have heavy-duty stereo sound anyways.
I'm pretty sure they're all mono anyway. So I was getting simulated stereo sound while I was capturing, and I played some fun games last night, because while I've considered the system sort of broken, it seems like such a hassle to hook it up for what might not be a pleasurable experience.
Yeah.
But I did it last night. I found the power cable. I found the AV cord. I found everything. I plugged it all in, and I had a great time with JJ and Jeff. Do you know that game's expensive now?
Is it?
It's like $50 now.
Why?
I don't know. So I just bought it last week. Except the only reason I bought mine is because I found a very, very good condition copy for like $15, and I was why not? And it's horrible. I mean, it's really, really painful to play.
Yeah.
But so after 5 minutes of that,
because it's like a shitty platformer.
yeah.
And not only that, but it's based on a Japanese comedy duo,
Yep.
which is already like,
Yeah.
like even in a non-crappy environment. I don't even know if you necessarily want to watch video clips of JJ, or they're not really called JJ and Jeff.
It's like Kato and Ken or something.
Yeah. I don't.
Now, so the funny thing is that they changed one of the animations.
The one where he's like taking a dump or something.
Well, I think the motion in the Japanese version is that they're farting.
Yeah.
And in the U.S. version, they're spray painting. It's really there's
out of their butts though.
Well, he does a weird pose when he does it. I'm like, this could still be.
It's like the under the leg spray paint.
The spray's coming out.
Yeah, he's getting it all over his pants. It's the only way I can do it.
There was something redeemable though. I think if you spend enough time with that game, it would be okay. The biggest glaring issue though is that there's just, it feels like there's no traction in the game. When you're done running, he just kind of like slows down to a walk and then stops. He's just it doesn't.
He's trying to cool down so he doesn't get a cramp.
Right. It's very difficult to land the jump properly. But there's a decent number of like little mini games and stuff, and I think there's a solid game in there somewhere if you can get used to the controls. But that's not what I ended up playing for the most of the night. I ended up playing Legend of Valkyrie for the PC Engine.
Okay.
Which is pretty awesome, I think.
It's like a kind of Zelda knockoff thing.
Kind of Zelda. Like if they made a Zelda super duper linear,
yeah, and
you could only take one path, it felt very much like that, like an original Legend of Zelda linear game. And I guess I wasn't aware of this, but it was an arcade game at one point.
Yeah, and
2 players at that. So I think this game was fun at a certain point. We'll decide that. We'll edit that out.
That's time number 1.
I'm not.
I figured, is it better to have me like dripping throughout the whole thing, just oozing all over the table?
You've seen these videos. The resolution is ridiculously bad. Yeah. Like no one's gonna be able to tell.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll just drip then.
You have shit on your face, and
do I?
Still have no idea.
And your neighbors are apparently having a nose-blowing rave across the hall.
Yeah, we love them. All right, Mike. So what have you been playing this week? Let's just jump into it.
All right. So I finished Danganronpa last week, and we had talked about like, was I going to jump right into the sequel or just give up? And I told myself, I know if I don't just finish this duo off, I'm not going to have the emotional energy to go through it again. So I jumped into the second game. And
I was worried about you this week.
Yeah, fuck, man. These games...
You took a little while to respond to one of my texts, and I was like, that was it.
He's done. He got run pod.
Going to find you hanging in your living room.
I know. They're so depressing. And like, the second game does a bunch of stuff I'm pretty sure was designed just to screw with people who had finished the first game.
Really?
Like, yeah, it's almost impossible to talk about these games without spoilers, but they just really mess with your expectations a lot. like what roles characters play, how the cases play out. Like they do follow certain murder mystery traditions where you can kind of tell like, okay, this is the guy that's gonna snap, or like this character is off limits. Just the way that the flow goes.
Sure.
And they've kind of been screwing with that a little bit, I think, to try and mess with players. And they changed some of the action segments too, which were never the first game's strong suit. I kind of felt like those games would have been better served to have just been all text and parser based. But and they made the action stuff a little bit trickier and not in great ways. But it's still a well-written story. The characters are still interesting. I'm very curious to see where this one is going, because I don't see how this one's going to end well.
How much further do you think you have?
I am going to guess I am about 3/4 of the way through. So I'm going to say another 5 to 6 hours, probably.
Okay. Nice.
Maybe more. Maybe a little bit more.
All right. I hope you picked up some Prozac.
Yeah. Well, so I borrowed Adventure Time, Legend of the Secret Kingdom from work. Or Legend of the Secret Kingdom? Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Is it the 3DS one?
It's 3DS and Xbox 360 for some reason. Yeah. So I got the Xbox version because, why not? I don't know. I'm not feeling it. As much as I love Adventure Time and I love that setting, so far it's felt kind of like a boring Zelda clone.
Really?
I'm not very far into it, so maybe it gets better, but it feels very empty. Like, one of the cool things about the 2D Zeldas are, for the most part, like, every screen has some kind of interesting thing going on in it. Yeah. This one just feels like there's a lot of dead space between screens.
Yeah, I've actually never played an Adventure Time game. I like Adventure Time, the show.
Yeah.
But I've kind of gotten that feeling from just the videos I've watched and the screenshots. I'm like, this looks like it's got to be a pretty low budget development team.
It's way forward. It's way forward.
Wait a minute. So, what did they make? I know they made something
Contra
big.
4, Shantae. What was that other one? Sigma Star Saga. They did the Thor game for the DS.
Yeah, I feel like they made something really big, though. I'm probably just wrong.
Yeah, maybe I'm blanking. No, they I don't think they've made a lot of really big stuff, but their shtick is usually very high-end looking 2D games. Okay. But they did They did the last two Adventure Time games. The dungeon one didn't get reviewed very well, so I didn't even bother. But that Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage, which was kind of a knockoff of Zelda 2, not bad.
Yeah.
Not a bad game. Yeah, definitely not like top tier, but as far as like Zelda 2 clones go, pretty solid.
This isn't as big as I thought it was, but they did make the Wii version of A Boy and His Blob.
Oh yeah, yep. That was one of theirs, and some couple other things too.
Blood Rain Betrayal.
Really? Oh, that's the 2D one. Yeah.
Aliens Infestation on DS, which
that was pretty good.
It's a kind of a Metroidvania.
Yeah, that was pretty decent.
Double Dragon Neon they made recently. Yep. Silent Hill Book of Memories.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, they tend to have
DuckTales Remastered.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, they tended to kind of stick close to Konami and Capcom.
Yeah. That's it. I thought there was something bigger.
Yeah, and a lot of their games feel like they're almost at the level of like a Japanese developed 2D game. Mm-hmm. Like they're big enthusiasts, but they haven't quite gotten it right. I think DuckTales and A Boy and His Blob and Contra were their three games that seem to have the highest reputation. And Shantae too. But a lot of their stuff does tend to get the it's almost good enough. So I don't know. I might stick with it a little bit, but I'm feeling kind of bored. There's other games to play, so.
Yeah, I'm curious about the ones that you said were good, because all of those games seem to be on pretty cheap. So they're worth checking out.
Yep, no, it's good stuff. I mean, they all tend to have some criticisms about they're a little too busy or too clean looking, but. And I liked Alien Infestation. I thought that was pretty good. Some of the mechanics occasionally felt like they were working against each other, but
I don't know how far I made it into that.
Yeah, well, the premise of that one was that if your guy died, that was it. They were dead for good.
Okay.
And you had to find a new soldier. There was something like 20 or 30 soldiers throughout the whole game, and every time somebody died, you'd swap out one of the ones that you'd found.
Okay.
But you couldn't. Your team had a max of 4, and you couldn't add anybody else until somebody died. So if you were trying to go through the game without anybody dying,
you were stuck with your original 4 people.
Yeah, who were not the most interesting. And then the other thing was,
so you're purposely going around having people get killed.
Yeah, well, the most of the game was really, really easy, except for the bosses, which were super hard. But they were super hard if you were trying to keep everybody alive. It was really hard to take down a boss without losing a guy. Okay. But if you're just going to burn through guys, way too easy. Like, no way you're going through 4 guys per boss.
Right on.
So,
all right. Yeah, I've been trying to spend time with. I've been trying to do videos for backlog.
Oh, backlog.
And after the Ring last week, I needed something a little more.
Yeah,
uplifting.
You got to pick some better games.
Yeah. So I actually did pick one last night that was good, and I don't need to keep anybody in suspense because nobody watches these things. The one I chose to do was a game that I've had for a really long time, and I've actually owned it a few times, and it's Dragon Egg for the PC Engine. It's like a 2D platformer. You go around. You're just like this little girl at first. You get a backpack on, and you go and you collect eggs, and as you get more eggs, the dragon in your backpack gets bigger and bigger and bigger
until it crushes you.
until you can fly it. And then it gets bigger, and you can even fly it further up and stuff. And it's very cartoony, as most PC Engine games are. And it feels really solid. The controls are great, and everything's awesome. But so last night I said, well, I'm going to start this game and see how far I can get. It's a platformer. It's like, I never beat it. I don't know why ever before. And I basically accidentally beat it last night. I spent, I want to say from beginning to end, I think I died once. It took me 38 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little insubstantial.
Yeah, and I wasn't even sure. Like there were shops where you could go buy stuff, and of course it's all in Japanese. So you're just kind of like being like, I think these are like heart vessels. I think this is Life Up. I think this is something. And I wasn't really sure what I was buying, and I pretty much decided by the end of the game that you never needed to buy anything. But the more you bought, the easier the game got. So I was just buying everything I could. So that'll be the new episode of Backlogged.
All right.
Which is funny because most of so far the first episode of Backlogged was like 5 minutes. The next one was like 6.5. I might just show the whole game. Like, okay, this one's 38 minutes. But it's the entire
so buckle
game.
Up.
Yeah.
And you're never gonna have to play this game because you've seen everything.
Figure out how Bryan Paul spends his Saturday nights. Sad and alone. That's adorable.
Sure.
It's really depressing. No. Okay, we got some news stories to talk about. We're going to be here all fucking day, man.
Nice, thank God.
Okay, the most important news story of the week, of course, is that McDonald's has bottled 200 bottles of its Big Mac special sauce.
Okay.
The proceeds are going to the Ronald McDonald House charity. The bottles are numbered from 1 to 200, and the very first one went for about $18,000 on eBay.
Are you bringing this up because gamers are really unhealthy? So you're just
Yes.
assuming that they're okay. All right.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why the fuck else would we talk about it? It's just weird. I mean,
yeah,
you're gonna suddenly bring to market your special sauce that's been on burgers for decades upon decades, but like probably like 70
which
years,
is
right?
Basically just mayonnaise. Like, I mean.
Did you see the Simpsons episode where they kind of reveal the secret sauce?
No.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Where they're like, take this drum of mayonnaise and leave it out in the sun. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, I did see that one. Yeah.
So I just thought it was weird. I mean, like, not that McDonald's needs more money, but they could certainly just bring it to market and sell it in grocery stores if that's what they really want to do. But if they're literally just trying to raise money for their charity,
I hope the guy that bought it for $18,000 grabbed it out of their hands, just bashed the top off, and immediately just chugged it. Just right there, just like 4 or 5 gulps, just gone.
They recommend that you put it on your boyfriend's awful lasagna.
Okay.
As if you're spending $18,000 on a bottle of special sauce, you need recommendations on where to put
You're
it.
just going to put it in the fridge like anything else. Like, it's got all the crusty shit around the cap. And
I mean, I don't know what you'd even do with it. I mean, I would just start making burgers at home, I guess.
Yeah.
Which would cost way more than just going to McDonald's and buying a burger.
Yeah, I would assume if you're going to spend $18,000, your first stop is probably a chemist who can figure out what's in it, and then you're going to make your own.
Good call.
Yeah.
But again, you could have gone to McDonald's and
That's true. Just bought
a
the
single
fucking
Big
burger
Mac for $2.
I guess
and then bring it to a chemist.
Through. Yeah.
So that was real important. Okay, this one's hilarious.
Once it touches the burger, it like it's like when you spray ammonia on like blood stains, it messes it up so you can't trace it. Once it touches the burger, it contaminates it, so you can't tell what's in it.
That's probably true even without the contamination issue. So do you know who Ricardo Medina Jr. is?
I wish I did, because that's a pretty great name.
You know who he is. He's the Red Power Ranger.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if he was I think they changed
original?
cast. They changed cast quite a
many
time.
times.
So he was from the Samurai, Power Rangers Samurai, and Power Rangers Wild Force.
Okay, never seen any of those.
Neither have I. But the great thing is that he was in Power Rangers Samurai. And you'll know why that's so awesome in just a second. Because he stabbed his roommate, Joshua Sutter, with a sword.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Oh, I hope he wasn't the guy. He's not a voice actor, is he?
I have no idea. This was as much as I cared.
Okay.
To look
Because
into
one
it.
of the former, I believe, Red Power Rangers is a pretty well-known game and anime voice actor. And
Really?
in fact is voicing the main character for Danganronpa 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. I hope it's not him.
I hope not either.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. They didn't press charges.
He was asking for it. No, I deserved it.
We're not-
What
so
kind of a
there's-
disagreement?
There's obviously more to this story, and they just kept calling him like housemate. This is housemate. It's his housemate. I'm going to just go ahead and say gay lover, because why else would you stab someone in the abdomen with a sword? That's what it is. Okay, next up.
I mean, I could think of a few reasons, but
Did you see the Nightcry gameplay trailer?
no.
You know what Nightcry is?
No.
No, it's Project Scissors, aka the new clock tower.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I have.
You're like, oh, now I really don't care.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I think I
You
had
should
heard a
care.
little bit.
It's only coming to mobile platforms and Vita.
I did hear about that, yeah.
Yeah. It looks okay. I mean, it looks like they need more money, which actually in the trailer they ask for. They say, please help us make this game. Come to our Kickstarter
Yeah.
site and fund us. Which I thought was a little strange in the trailer.
They should have had it like live streaming and like maniacs chasing the woman or whatever, and like each time the people donated, she got like a little bit further away.
That's the
Yeah,
game.
Yeah.
So
that would fit for a mobile platform, pay to survive.
Right. It looks good. Like, I think I'll play it. It looks very much, though. It looks very clunky. It looks very like original Clock Tower games. We're not talking.
Those are point and click adventure games too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slowly point and slowly
Yeah,
click and slowly walk.
Stealth point and click adventure.
Yeah. I want to say it was Capcom, I think, that picked up the third game and released it and made it a little more action oriented.
Yeah.
Made it no point and click. I think you had direct control over your character.
Yeah.
But something was lost. You know, you didn't get the real awesomeness from that game. Although I want to play that again. So that's happening. You like Zelda.
I do.
Did you get Majora's Mask 3D?
It's not out yet, is it? It's next. Isn't Tuesday?
Oh, is it?
I think so. Yeah.
You sure?
Pretty sure. I tend to watch the release schedules pretty closely.
Okay. So you didn't get it then?
No, not yet.
It looks good.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the Next to Zelda 2. It's kind of the black sheep of Legend of Zelda.
But Black Sheep,
In a good way.
in the Zelda franchise, isn't a horrible thing.
No.
I know a lot of people who think Majora's Mask is the best game in the series.
Yeah, it definitely has a good reputation.
Yeah. What was your opinion on the 64 version?
I never finished it, actually. But, yeah, I was actually very kind of loath to go back to the 64 Zeldas. I know they have a great reputation, but I mean, for me, it's hard to not feel like the 2D games had things kind of down to a science, and then the 3D games peaked at Wind Waker, and everything else is kind of just there.
But I mean, Ocarina of Time is often considered the best game ever made.
Yeah, it's up there. Just not one of my favorites. It's fine. I've beaten it. Yeah. I've played through it. I've watched somebody else play through it.
Okay.
It's fine.
My problem with both of the Zelda games on the N64 is literally the N64 itself.
Yeah.
Those games did not age well. Or nothing on that platform aged well. And that controller is horrible.
Yeah, it's probably the worst mainstream game controller, I would say.
I'm just going to say it's the worst one ever made.
Yeah. The worst. I don't know. We've used some of the weird ones that have come with some of those random consoles.
Maybe the CDI was worse. Yeah. Moving on. We talked about Astro Boy.
We did.
Kind of at length a couple episodes ago.
Yep.
Did you hear they're making a live-action movie?
No, I haven't heard that. That's interesting.
It's made by Animal Logic Entertainment. It's a long way off.
They're hiring Weta to do his hair.
The people who are making it aren't really known for making their own movies. From what I can tell, they were known mostly for like doing the special effects for the Avengers movies.
Huh.
So I think this will be interesting. I think this is going to be kind of a test run for them to see if they can make their own movies. I don't know anything about them. I apologize. If you are them, you're not watching.
My biggest question is, how are they going to handle the machine gun that comes out of his ass?
Live action. Just put a machine gun in his ass.
Method acting.
Weird.
That's some dedication.
It seems like a strange choice.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's not a human. He's designed to look like...
I mean, that's kind of the point of the show. He's not a human.
Well, right. So my question is why go live action with it? You know, he's never been shown in any live action format before, right?
As far
it's
as
all
I
been
know, no.
cartoon, manga,
cartoon, CD.
CGI. Yeah,
CGI.
But more importantly, when we're talking about live action recreations, Netflix and Zelda are getting along real well.
Really?
Yeah, Netflix is developing a live-action Zelda series.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Right? I can't believe that more people's faces haven't exploded from this news.
Is it going to be like based on the games or like set in the world?
So the only thing we really know, Netflix has just declined to comment on it. The news was broken by the Wall Street Journal, and they described it as Game of Thrones for a family audience. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can interpret that.
None of them are good. They all verbally resemble somebody just running up and kicking an old man in the balls.
Well, see, the very first thing that came to mind, of course, was like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, and and every Friday they would have the...
If we're lucky.
Well, every Friday they'd have the Zelda cartoon instead of Super Mario.
Which is fine. None of those...
Right. So, I'm going to guess that Nintendo has learned from the past and is going to hold onto these franchises pretty tightly and make sure that their input...
There's the fucking Super Mario Brothers movie, too.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
We just... moratorium on discussing that movie.
It's odd that history hasn't hated that movie more. People look back at it now and say it's actually decent.
Oh, no, it's not.
Oh.
I definitely rewatched that a number of years ago, and it's still quite bad.
I haven't seen it. Oh, ever.
I mean, it's hilariously bad. It's definitely one of those movies that's great to like Mystery Science Theater, but it's awful. I mean, it's
nothing redeeming.
No. It's I mean, it's garbage.
Okay. I'm gonna watch it now because now it sounds like a movie.
It's hilarious garbage. There's definitely a lot. When I rewatched it with my college roommates, and the best part is in the background of like a bunch of scenes, there's this guy like, and this is like real background. You have to really be focused to notice like this guy running around like wildly flapping his arms like a bird, and he keeps showing up in like different scenes. And then there's a scene where they're getting like hauled into the police station, and you see in the background again this guy getting hauled into the police station. That's the best part of the whole movie.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
It's funny because you think about movies from maybe that era, and you kind of generally assume that when you watch them at our age, they're all going to be bad. But I know I told you this recently, but I watched the very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie within the last month or two, and I got to say, I think that actually got better somehow.
I could see that. I have not watched that movie in quite a while, but I would imagine that has aged moderately well. It was done. If I recall, it was done fairly respectful to the original comics.
Yep. And it was, I tried to get through the second one, and it wasn't. It kind of went downhill.
Did you watch the third one, where they time travel?
So as much as I think I wore out my original VHS tape of the first TMNT movie, and then saw the second one once or twice when I was a kid, and I never in my entire life have seen the third movie, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I probably have watched the third movie more than the others.
Really?
Yeah, because again, I'm a couple years younger than you, so that was the one that was like on TV all the time.
Yeah, totally understandable. Do you know who Human Nature is? They're a game developer.
No.
They made Doki Doki Universe on the PS4. It wasn't an amazing game.
Yeah.
It was entertaining when there were no other games to play. But now they just teased a new Toe Jam and Earl game.
Really?
Yeah.
Because Toe Jam and Earl sequels have a good reputation.
Mm-hmm. Did you play the Xbox one?
No, it just looked like shit.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I know. I noticed it on your shelf
I've
when we were
never
moving
even,
things around.
Never even once put it in the system.
Well, it seems like they all missed the point of the first game.
Oh, yeah?
Which, I mean, the first game was...
You walk around trying to collect parts to get your ship back together.
Yeah, but it was all randomly generated. I mean, the first game was a dungeon crawl, a savagely hard roguelike, actually, dungeon crawl, where, like, you could open treasure chests and just die. Like, everything was hostile. I mean, and it was, despite its goofy trappings, it was a brutally hard game.
And you liked it?
It's not one of my favorites, but I at least appreciate what it did. I can appreciate the consistency. Like, if you know what you're doing with Toe Jam and Earl, you can make headway in it. It's one of those games like a roguelike where you just have to take a lot of notes and move slowly and like pay attention to your surroundings.
I never got into it. I know I played it once or twice, and I skipped the Panic on Funkatron. I think that was the second one. And then
again, that was like a shitty platformer.
Right. Yeah. So that's happening.
Okay.
Hopefully they get back to what the first game was good at. I don't have high hopes for it.
Yeah, the third one kind of seemed like it just became about racial stereotypes.
Oh, good. Now I have more interest in it.
Yeah, and there you go.
Radio Shack, our favorite store.
I know them.
Well, you
it's
know,
where I buy things when I feel like spending a lot of money.
On nothing.
Yeah.
You won't know them very much longer.
Oh, no.
They filed for bankruptcy.
Oh, that's long overdue.
Yeah, well, they made a deal with Sprint, so all the stores aren't closing. They are closing 2,400 out of the 4,000 stores. They have 27,000 employees. So by doing the math, they're going to have about 15,000 people out of a job. So sorry for your loss.
Yeah, that sucks.
It's never fun when companies go south. The remaining stores are going to stay open as sort of like a store within a store sort of deal with Sprint. I don't know. It just seems like it's...
You walk through the door and there's another smaller door that you have to open up.
It seems like it's just delaying the inevitable.
Well, that's
eventually they're going to close.
Yeah, I mean, that's how these things tend to go nowadays.
Yeah. The final thing I want to talk about is there's a game coming out, and I just saw this today. It's called Slasher Volume 1 Summer Camp.
Okay.
So it's sort of the Friday the 13th version of Evolve.
Really?
Yeah, so you play as this character who's actually acted by the... He plays... the guy who plays the bad guy is actually the actor who played Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th.
Oh, really?
So that's awesome. So it's not actually a Friday the 13th game from what I can tell, but it might as well be.
When you say plays him, I mean, does he speak the part, or Jason didn't talk?
I think it's all about the motion.
Oh, motion capture. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a 6 to 8 player game, and it's a bunch of camp counselors or maybe camp attendees. I don't know, and then the one killer, and it's just like Evolve. You get to play as the monster, and it sounds awesome. It's a third-person survival horror game, and it's coming out this summer, and I'm super fucking excited.
That does sound pretty cool. Although, you realize that means you're going to have to make some friends.
No, because I'm just going to play as the guy who kills everyone.
Oh, okay.
That's the only reason I want to play Evolve. I think that's
you
why.
realize there's going to be a super long wait for that role.
Yeah, I do, and that's the only reason I wanted to play Evolve, was because I realized this was a way I could play multiplayer and not have to team up with anybody.
You can do that in Dark Souls too, you know?
Yeah, but then I'd have to play Dark Souls. Dark Souls 2 apparently is getting quite the makeover for the Xbox One and PS4.
Yeah, a huge patch dropped Wednesday, I think, adding in a new last boss. Yeah, which is pretty fucking wild.
There's a lot of changes going on, and it looks beautiful. If it wasn't for Bloodborne coming out, I'd probably be mildly entertained the thought of picking it up. But with Bloodborne, it's like Bloodborne is literally a month away. I'll wait.
All right.
Yeah,
that's good. You're learning patience.
No, I just don't have much. I played Demon Souls for hours and I got to the second level. I've learned my lesson. I don't.
All right.
I don't need those games in my life.
But you're still gonna pre-order essentially sight unseen one that is coming out, the new one. All right.
I have literally 2 games pre-ordered for the rest of the year.
All right.
Yeah, and that's one of them. In the order. I think that's it.
Both coming out kind of around the same time, right?
The order is coming out in a week.
Yeah.
Or a week and a half. And then
Bloodborne
the month after.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's exciting. I'm glad I get to spend so much money so soon. And that's it. That's all the news that happened this week.
So long, everybody. That was a great,
It is. So what else is happening this week? Valentine's Day is coming up.
It is. Valentine's Day is on Saturday.
Do you have the news ready?
You know... this is not even remotely funny, so this is obviously why I'm going to talk about it. I often feel like hating Valentine's Day. I often
feel like hating Valentine's Day too.
I don't hate Valentine's Day, and I usually feel like people who hate Valentine's Day, it's sour grapes. It's because they're still buying into Valentine's Day, and they're not. But they're in a position in their life where they can't do the things that they really want to do on Valentine's Day, so they're miserable. Where I feel like if you really think it's dumb, just kind of ignore it. It doesn't, especially if you're not in school anymore, and you're not working at a candy store or a flower store, the impact of, you work at a restaurant, so there might be a little bit of an impact there, too, I guess.
It's a huge impact.
Okay, sorry, I take it back.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day is a scourge. It poisons our existence.
Love Valentine's Day.
Really?
I do. I'm a huge fan of it.
because you get huge tips.
Oh, no. Okay, let me tell you a secret about the restaurant industry. New Year's Eve and Valentine's Day are very often the only 2 times that you get people out of their house, and it's because their girlfriends make them leave. If you only go to a restaurant twice a year, you don't know how to tip. So, often on
they
those,
reach into your pockets and take money out.
Right? Is this enough?
Yeah.
We're the busiest you can be. We're literally the reservations are gone. We're totally packed to the brim a week ahead of time. So we're as busy as we can possibly be. Sales wise, do awesome, and then tip wise, you're on shaky ground the whole night. You can get lucky, but more often you get fucked.
So what's your reason for loving Valentine's? Is it because you're secretly a teenage girl?
Well, yes.
That's not
not
really a secret,
no.
I guess.
I can sing the entire theme song to iCarly.
I know.
Yes.
I know. Please don't.
Again. No, I secretly love it. No, I outwardly love it. Because doing the job that I do means that I have to work New Year's Eve. I have to work Valentine's Day. I never have to make plans for Valentine's Day. Right? It's not a cheap day to go out on. You know, you gotta go buy the girl flowers or candy or dinner or movies or whatever the fuck that she wants. I don't know what girls want, obviously. That's the new intro.
Okay.
We just talked for 15 minutes about something you're never going to hear. I just edited all of that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, the other week, I had to edit out where I worked. Because I was talking about it.
Oh, yeah. I did notice there was one little, break.
Yeah.
It was actually fairly inconspicuous, but...
It was enough.
Yeah.
It was enough.
I noticed it, but it wasn't, glaring.
I don't want people to know where either one of us work.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
Until we can just do this for a living and not work.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, I'm a government employee, so
yeah. I mean, there's 5,000 restaurants in the city. If you find me, then say hi. But yeah, all right.
But they will, because they'll all come. Look, Bryan, I love you.
Everybody wants Bryan.
Yeah.
Brian's life is so hard.
I know, it's brutal.
Mikey, since this is Valentine's Day week,
yes,
it is.
It is. Yep.
Talk to me about the topic you'd come up with.
So we kind of kicked. Well, I kicked around, and you agreed with me.
I just didn't have a better suggestion. Really.
I thought it was a pretty good one.
It is.
The idea of God, this is going to sound so fucking sad. Relationships with games. Yeah, I know. This is not this. Well, most of this is not going to be about body pillows and weird obsessions with anime characters. But it's
all I wrote about. I don't have any of it.
At least the way I originally framed it was games where, over the span of years or one particular incident, we have kind of more than I pop this into the system, play it, and then I'm done. Some part of our lives is somewhat... So, we're kind of covering our topic of our theme of the show. We're getting into outside life. Just games that have integrated themselves into our brains, into our lives in interesting ways.
Okay. Well, fuck. This is interesting because I actually think that this topic is really going to start to not only define each of us as a gamer and how we play games, but also a little bit more. I think it goes a little bit deeper. I think your relationship with games actually defines your relationship with people and the way you think about other people. And I think my relationship with games says the same about me. So I think this is gonna be more fun than I thought it was.
Okay, which is why you play all games for 5 minutes, then put them on the shelf and never look at them again.
So we keep you around for, Mike.
Yeah,
Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
Why don't you start?
Okay.
Since I think you maybe tackled this topic better than I did.
Well, I mean, we talked beforehand how we both kind of have some stories to tie to some of these games.
Yeah.
And
you just better be uplifting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they're
mine or not.
So, I'm actually going to go in reverse order. So, when I was in college, I very rarely went home for any of the vacations. I usually would just stay in my dorm room, and everybody else. It was kind of nice, everybody else would leave. I'd have
that was me too.
3 days to a week just by myself. I could just chill out, do whatever I wanted.
Yep.
I think the first time it happened, I was like, yeah, I'm going to play video games in my underwear. And so I'm sitting around in my underwear and I'm like, oh, I'm cold. I'm going to put my clothes back on.
Awesome.
And yeah. But I did go home. My parents one February, which is spring break at my college. Yeah. Anyway, they went to Disney with my brother. And yeah, it's fine.
This sounds like it's getting sad.
No, that's fine. I don't go on vacation with my family for a reason. And so they asked me to house sit for them.
Okay.
And I was like, that sounds awesome, because not only like am I gonna just get to chill out by myself for a while, but I'll have a whole house, not just some little dorm room,
right.
you know,
you
on the
can
campus.
turn the heat on, and then you can sit around your
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I went to my parents' house, and we got like pounded by snow within the first day or two, and I was like, well, shit. So I got up in the morning and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just shovel myself out, and then I'm gonna go for a drive for a little while. I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll pick up a new game. You know, this is gonna be a great day. About the third or fourth shovel of snow, I threw my back out.
Wow. And
so I was like laid out flat for the entire rest of spring break. I couldn't do, because I didn't have the strength to shovel any more of the snow, so I couldn't get my car out of the driveway. So even if my back was strong enough that I could have gone places, like I couldn't. So I ended up just sitting in my parents' house, and I had my laptop with me, and I fired up a copy of Curse of Monkey Island. Okay. You know, I had like a heat pack on my back, I had like a blanket over me, and I was just sitting there on my laptop playing Curse of Monkey Island. And it was kind of great. So for a couple days, and this was the first time I'd gone through the game, it was one of my brothers, so I didn't have it with me very often. I just sat there and I went through the whole game, and it was awesome. It was basically like this little cartoon, like this funny cartoon movie that I got to watch for like 3 days. It was like I said, it was the first time that I'd ever really spent a lot of time with this. It was the first Monkey Island game, and I was like, these characters are great. Like, LucasArts is so awesome. They've just really nailed this atmosphere and the voice acting and the characterization. And so to this day, like every once in a while, usually during winter when I'm like stuck inside for a while, I will pop out, you know, Curse of Monkey Island, and I'll go through it, and it's like just getting to rewatch this fun cartoon movie, except, you know, unlike, you know, a normal Disney thing where you're done in an hour and a half, like, even though I know most of the puzzles pretty well by now, it's still, you know, a good several hours, so I get to like really kind of spend time with these characters again and have this fun little like adventure, just remembering a time when I didn't have any responsibilities and I was just by myself.
So that's kind of funny. You said that it was the first one you ever played.
It was, yeah.
And that's actually the first one I didn't play.
I missed out.
I'm sure I did. I'm sure. I loved Secret of Monkey Island. The first one I thought was just fantastic. And then I was probably in the minority for the second one. LeChuck's Revenge, it was good, and I thought it was fantastic, but it didn't grab me like the first one did. I think the puzzles maybe were like even more obscure than the first one. And then I sort of, I want to say that I fell off of the adventure game wagon soon after that.
That's about when everybody else did too. So I think
because then I missed out on like Full Throttle and Grim Fandango and
it's, you know, it's really sad too thinking about it, because when adventure games kind of died, or when they went from being a staple to kind of this peripheral part of the industry, was like right when they got awesome.
Right.
Like Curse of Monkey Island, Leisure Suit Larry 7, the Neverhood. Neverhood's a little bit different, but it's still animated. It's clay animated, you know, stop motion. But it was like we suddenly had seriously interactive cartoons, and they were great. They had a great formula, you know, for the interactivity, and they were tons of fun. All of those games are phenomenal games, and then we just were like, that's too good.
Right.
Time to do shitty full motion video. Where's Phantasmagoria?
Oh, you know, I've always wanted to play that, because that was Roberta Williams, right?
It was, yeah.
She made King's Quest and then went to Scary Games.
Yeah, one of her. Well, Phantasmagoria, I think, is an important cultural artifact, but maybe as a game.
Yeah. For a long time, I always confused Phantasmagoria with The Seventh Guest.
I knew you were going to say The Seventh Guest. Yeah.
They came out like around the same time, and they had the kind of the same look to them.
Yeah.
But I know The Seventh Guest isn't scary at all, and
Phantasmagoria
Phantasmagoria is supposed to be.
Yeah, Phantasmagoria is at least, I mean, from what I've heard, is perhaps not a very well acted game, but very good at being unsettling.
Okay. I don't even know if like a PC would run that properly anymore. But
yeah, you need to find some kind of workaround, I would assume.
Yeah, I'd love to go through that. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually funny that your first game that you mentioned was a LucasArts adventure game, because the first game I want to talk about is I've been playing games since as far back as I can remember, but this is the first game I remember choosing and saying, this is a game I want to play. But yet I still don't know how I came about. I don't know how it got into my life. I don't know how it like first ever appeared, because I was obsessed with Maniac Mansion. My dad had a Commodore 64, and we played everything on that. And so that's where I got Maniac Mansion. Now, the funny thing is, I was trying to do some research and trying to figure out, when did I get this game? And, I couldn't have had it when it first came out.
Yeah.
But I must have gotten it like within the first week that it came out, because it came out it says October of 87. So maybe like a late birthday present that year or something. I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is mind-boggling how much time I spent with that game. Looking at like the limited attention span I have for pretty much anything nowadays. I remember just walking around the first floor of the Maniac Mansion, and just not knowing what to do. I remember getting thrown into the dungeon by, I think it was Nurse Edna, who was in the kitchen. When she's in there and there's like blood all over the walls, and there's a chainsaw, and she's looking in the refrigerator, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And she throws you in the dungeon. And I was like, "Oh no." Now, being my first foray into LucasArts adventure games, I was like, I think that means I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I think I died.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't find a way out of the dungeon for a very long time. It didn't stop me from playing the game. So it was. This was before the internet. This was before even, and I played this game for a long, long time before I even got a hint book for it. So just sitting there and trying to click on every single thing possible. Obviously that's what they wanted you to do, but as being an 8-year-old kid, I think it taught me a few lessons as far as video gaming is concerned.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. Like I was so enraptured into this world, and I didn't get the humor at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was supposed to be a funny game, and I took it pretty seriously. I was the wrong age for it. If I was like 5 years older, it would have been hilarious.
Microwaving that hamster was just a emotionally scarring experience.
I thought it was dark, and of course it is a dark. Dark humor.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a pivotal moment in gaming.
Yeah.
This is when I knew that this was something that I needed to do for the rest of my life. And the reason I brought up when it came out, because I played this game incessantly for a year. And when I found out that Zach McCracken in the Alien Mindbenders was basically the spiritual successor, I had to have it. And I begged my parents, and they let me like pre-order it or whatever. Way to go! Haven't learned.
Yeah, they just teaching you those lessons. That's
right.
Where it started.
But I remember like scouring over screenshots of Zach McCracken and being like, "There's a store you can buy stuff. Oh my god! Can you imagine if you could buy stuff in Maniac Mansion? Like your inventory would be so full, and think of all the ways you could solve puzzles and so. But that's funny because that game came out almost exactly a year later after Maniac Mansion, which means. Like, I literally had Maniac Mansion when it first came out. I have no idea where I first heard about this game. Like, I'd love to actually talk to my parents and be like, do you have any recollection as to why I own this game at all? I had a Maniac Mansion full-size poster above my bed. Like, I was obsessed. So the story does go a little bit further. Besides being my first gaming obsession and, like, just loving it, I remember when it came out for the NES. And according to my research, it was September of 1990, so 3 years after the original came out. I was still so obsessed in 1990 with Maniac Mansion that I made my mom buy me the Nintendo Power. Now, I don't have a Nintendo. I don't have an NES at the time with the Maniac Mansion cover. Because I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it's going to come out on the NES. All my friends had it. the NES, and they knew how obsessed I was with Maniac Mansion. So all of them got the game. Like, we got to finally play this game Bryan loved so much. And I will say that I still think Maniac Mansion on the NES is one of the best games on the system.
That story wasn't sad. That was a perfectly acceptable childhood anecdote. And then my mom exploded.
The next one's bad.
Oh God!
You better lift everyone's spirits before I bring them all down.
Beforehand?
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty.
Okay, I'm basically taking this list in reverse. So I'm kind of combining two games, but it's because I think they have an interesting history.
Okay.
So when I was, I was probably in middle school when this happened. It was right around when I first really started to get into role-playing games, console role-playing games. I was a big, Final Fantasy III fan, a big, Chrono Trigger fan. And I heard about this game, Ogre Battle. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I saw the screenshots and, you've got these control of these armies. I was always big about, I liked having big character parties. I liked recruiting characters a lot.
Okay.
So I loved Final Fantasy III because there's 16 characters or something in that game. And so with Ogre Battle, you could build your whole army. You've got teams and teams and you move all these guys around. So I was so excited about this game. You just couldn't find it anywhere, though.
Really?
They had a copy at the rental store that I went to, and I actually even tried to buy it from them a few times. I was calling them and you sure you won't just sell me this game? I'll buy it. No good.
Hey, kid, we get paid $6 an hour. Stop calling.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of authority.
Yeah, I talked to the manager, and I think he even said he made a call to corporate or something on my behalf. I spent one summer just scouring, because I rented the copy and I played it, and it was just as great as I had envisioned. So I was like, I need to have this game.
Man, before the internet, things really sucked, huh?
They did, yeah, they did. Although that we do now know that game had a notoriously low print run. That's one of the lower run games for the SNES. And I spent a whole summer just scouring anywhere for that game, and I couldn't find it. No place had it. And FuncoLand actually, if they did have it, they were selling it for $100, even back in the day. And I was like, I don't think I can afford that.
Wow.
Anyway, so the fact everybody knew that I liked fantasy role playing games, everyone in my family. So but because there were only 6 of them on the SNES, that meant that I tended to get a lot of duplicates for birthdays and things, which was fine. I just go exchange them for something else.
Sure.
So I got, for 1 year on my birthday, I got Breath of Fire 2, which I already had, and I was like, I already have this one. And from my aunt and uncle, and my aunt said, well, if you want to go to the store, we can exchange it, and you can pick out something else that you'd like. So we went to FuncoLand, actually, which I guess still sold new games at that point too. And they were like, okay, this is a $60 game, so you can get that. And almost I had obviously asked this particular FuncoLand a million times if they had Ogre Battle, and they never did. So just totally on a whim, I wasn't even planning to ask about it. I was going to get some other random game, but on a whim I was like, oh, do you happen to have Ogre Battle in? And they're like, oh yeah, I think we do. And I was like, what? Guy comes back, he's got the game with all of the inserts too, and that game came with maps and a huge instruction booklet and equipment and armor tables and everything, character promotion guides. It had all this. He's like, oh yeah, we just got this in. I was like, oh. Of course, it was $40 more than the game that I was exchanging, but my aunt was just like, that's fine, you can just have that one. I was like,
and the little Mike Zeller's heart grew 3 sizes
that was
that
great.
day.
And I played the shit out of that game. And then, then a couple of years later, they re-released it on the PlayStation. That was much easier to get your hands on. And
didn't you tell me that it wasn't as good?
Well, people bitch a lot because it's got loading times, which do start to add up because you're getting into battles constantly.
Right.
But it also has in the Super Nintendo version, you can only save between levels. The PlayStation version lets you save during levels. Since some of the later levels could be 3 hours long,
Oof.
even with some of the negative, the screen looks a little, the graphics are a little blur, muddier.
Yeah.
Some of the animations aren't as nice. I don't see how you can possibly play the Super Nintendo version unless you're playing on an emulator, because it just...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So...
You're saying that because on the emulator you can do the save states.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And or like on WiiWare or something like that. So then a couple of years after that, Tactics Ogre came out. And it came out on the PlayStation right around the same time that Final Fantasy Tactics did. Mm-hmm. But so I got by that point I was really into, Final Fantasy. So I got Final Fantasy Tactics instead. And Tactics Ogre was one of those games that was always like on the discount shelf for like $20. And so I'd always be like, I'll get it later.
Yep.
I'll get it later. And then suddenly it was just gone.
We learned a lot of lessons early in life.
Yeah, unfortunate ones. Really unfortunate lessons.
As soon as a game gets cheap and you want it, you better pick it up.
Yeah, that's kind of the way to go. And so I started, scanning for it on like eBay, and suddenly it got like really expensive on the secondary market. And it was one of those games that was on my to-buy list for years, but I'm like, I'm not spending $80 on this game. Like, I can't do it. So eventually, after years, I finally found a copy for $50. I managed to snag one. I think it was during the economic crisis when everything was being sold on eBay because people had to pay their mortgages. So I finally found a copy for $50, and I brought it home, and I, hooked it up, and I was like, all right, here we go. And I started playing, and it's kind of nasty. Like in the beginning, it's a little rough. And I was like, okay, well, I can handle this. I just have to get used to it. Like, Tactics Ogre has character permadeath. It's all the enemies scale with you, so you kind of have to keep your guys leveled. So I'm playing through this game, and I put in a good few hours, and I'm not really having a lot of fun. But I'm like, all right, I just got to get over the hump. I got to get to the part where it starts getting good. Yeah. And my girlfriend was watching me play at one point, and she's like, isn't this that game that you've been trying to get for a really long time? And I was like, yeah, it is. And she's like, well, you're swearing a lot. Like, are you enjoying yourself? And I'm like, it's fine. I'll not right at the moment, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, wouldn't it be kind of funny, like, if after all of this time, of you pining after this game, you finally play it and it sucks? And I was just like, shut up, just shut the fuck up.
Relationship over.
And so I played it for like a little while longer after that, but like every time I'd play it, I'd just like hear her voice in the back of my head, like, what if it sucks? I was just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And I just gave up on it eventually.
Because it actually sucks.
It does suck, yeah. But here's the thing. It's that particular port that sucks.
Yeah. Because
of like the changes that they made between that and the original Super Nintendo version, it just kind of gums up some of the works. So then years later, I mean, this was only I don't know, probably 6 years ago maybe, that it got ported to the PSP. And this was supposed to be like the definitive version of Tactics Ogre. Like this was it. It was a total like ground up. They were using the original assets, but the original team was getting together and they're like rebuilding this game as it intended to be. And so I was super excited. Pre-ordered it, day one release. Yeah. And I started playing, and I was like, this feels a lot like the PlayStation. Like this is rough and not a lot of fun. But then I did kind of get over a hump, and it started getting better. Anyway, I have probably put like 200 hours into Tactics Ogre. It's one of those games that it's kind of great, but I kind of hate it too. Like it, especially this PSP port, because they definitely they make some changes that make it a lot easier. Like you level up classes instead of individual characters, so. As long as you're leveling up the classes as you go, if you recruit new characters, they kind of like match up with your current party. But then they make it so that every new class that you recruit, and most of like the special characters or some unique class, starts at level 1, which means they're dog food for 10 hours. They're useless. And then the battles are really tough and tactical. Like, you can't fight like an idiot. It's definitely a more strategic game than Final Fantasy Tactics. But then they let you rewind mid-battle, which it's not going to save you if you're just completely out-leveled.
Right.
But, like, if you make a dumb move, you can just be like, whoop, okay, if I move there, they're just going to tear the hell out of me, so whoop, we'll fix that. Right. Which, again, kind of means, like, well, why is this so hard then? Wouldn't it have been better to just make it easier?
But it would be easier for them just to add the rewind option.
Yeah, I guess so. And then they made, like, the last chunk of the story super dependent upon, like, ridiculous grinding and just real micromanaging kind of stuff. And, like, you can still get to the credits, but then there's this huge epilogue afterwards, which clears up what happens to, like, a huge portion of the cast, and also allows you to recruit, like, a bunch of special characters, and it's all, like, very grindy, and it involves this dungeon that's really shitty. And then the strategy guide doesn't... It ends. Like, the strategy guide ends before the epilogue. Like, there's a whole chunk of stuff. If you go into the weapon tables in the strategy guide, there's a bunch of stuff that just has question marks next to it. And it's like...
Right, why do I have a strategy
I had to
guide?
go to some Japanese site and get an Excel spreadsheet, like, detailing how to find all of this gear. And because that's the other thing. Since everybody's always the enemies are always the same level as you. Yeah. The only way to get any kind of edge is with gear, or and you have to keep up with the gear because the enemy always has the best gear equipped. But fairly early into the end game, shops stop selling anything that's useful. Like, you have to get it off of drops.
Yeah.
Because the enemy's going to have it. So then you're grinding, but you can't let your guys level up too much while you're grinding, it's ridiculous.
You're stressing me out just talking about it.
But it also has, like, one of the most involved stories ever. The scenarios are great. The battles actually require intelligence without being, like, overly, it's not like if you move here, everyone dies kind of setup. It's like, if you have a strategy, you can kind of take these battles the way you want. So it's one of these games, I pick it up every once in a while, and I'll play it, and I'll have a lot of fun, and then I'll hate it, and I'll put it back on the shelf.
100% of my knowledge of ogre battle games, or tactics ogre, comes from you. And from that knowledge that you've imparted on me, I have 100% decided I don't ever want to come close to these games. Ever, ever, ever.
See, they're kind of exactly what they want, what I want. But then they have these little tweaks in there designed to just, like, irritate the hell out of me. Yeah. It's like, why did you add in this extra stuff? You were done, It's like you drew this amazing portrait of some guy, and then you drew, like, a giant cartoon penis on him. Like, why did you add that in?
Mike, you'd mentioned Funko Land.
Speaking of giant cartoon penises.
Right. You'd mentioned Funko Land, and I don't have much of a history when it comes to that store. I know that when I was growing up, I would see little ads for Funko Land in the back of magazines and stuff, and be like, what is this magical place?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until college. I remember my parents, like, dropping me off at college for the first time, and I'm just, like, sitting in the back of the car, and I'm staring out the window, and we're on the highway, but just off in the distance, I can see a building with a multicolored sign, and it says Funko Land. And I was like, oh my God, there's a Funko Land. I'm like, how close to school are we? And they're like, like 15 minutes. And I was like, there's a Funko Land 15 minutes away from school? Like,
immediately jumped out of the car, ran across the highway, and got hit by a car.
Totally.
Spent the next 7 years in traction.
It would have been time better spent.
Yeah.
So I still didn't make it there for months and months and months. And actually, I want to say that the story that I'm thinking of happened maybe the end of my sophomore year. No, possibly the end of my junior year. And things were good for me in college. I had a lot of fun, and school was whatever. The school part, I don't remember that much. But the fun part...
But the drugs
and the alcohol were amazing, and I had a lot of great friends. And we just... And even though it was sort of a strict school when it came to, like noise and parties and whatever, we still managed to find a lot of ways to have fun. But at the end of my junior year, I think things started going really, really south. Like, I had friends who were like failing out of school because they'd maybe hung out with me a little too much.
Oh no, they're failing out of school, and you know it's your fault.
Yeah, a lot of it was my fault, or my presence didn't help the situation for sure. So that was happening, and my roommate, who I was really, really close with, he had some issues, and we ended up getting into like a huge blowout fight. And so then it was at that point, it was like, well, whose friends are whose? Are we still going to hang out with the same people? And
that's rough.
It got really messy. And quite literally, while he was at class one day, I talked to the RD of my building, and I was like, "Listen, this has gotten to the point where we can't live together anymore. It was a really bad situation." And he goes, "Well, the guys across the hall from you just moved out." And I was like, "Really? Like, there's an empty room?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "So just to like make everything convenient for you," he's like, "I'm just going to give you the approval to move in there and have your own room, have your own single." And he goes, "And I'll do the paperwork for you." He's
nice.
Like, I was like, "Wow, thank you." I'm like, "Why?" Like, we never had like a friendship or anything. Like, I don't know why he was suddenly so nice to me. But I remember I was getting all my stuff moved in, and he came by, and he's like, "Hey, I saw that you had a Sony PlayStation," and I was like, "Oh, what do you want?" And he goes,
I know where this is a great story. Why?
Well, it started off so bad,
yeah.
but anything relating to video games eventually gets better.
Yeah,
like my life started off lately. So he comes in and he's like, "I saw you had a Sony PlayStation." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, you must like video games." And I was like, I'm kind of obsessed. I'm like, the only reason I don't play them all the time is because I'm a broke college kid. And he goes, "Well," because it's probably not worth anything. He goes, "But I've had a Sega Saturn like just sitting in the corner of my room for like a year." He goes, "You can have it." And I was like, "Well, I'd love it." I'm like, "But what do you want for it?" He's like, "No, you can just have it." I was like, "Oh, please. Yes." And he had like a few games. I think he had like the original Panzer Dragoon.
Yeah.
And
he's like mid sentence, and you just knock him to the ground, running right into the room and take it.
And I forgot what else he had, but they were like,
it's still hooked up to the TV, and you're just running out. The TV falls over, and smashes.
I think that was literally my excitement level, but I was trying to like be reserved because he's giving this to me. I want to be respectful, and I think like Virtua Fighter, like the original Virtua Fighter, or maybe the remix or whatever was he gave that to me too, and it was like the old clunky controller and stuff. So I had it, and like, but I didn't use it that much because I just didn't have anything I wanted to play on it. I mean, Panzer Dragoon was awesome, don't get me wrong, but like that was it. And then I remembered Funko Land. Angels started singing, the clouds opened up, light shone down.
This is the like the usual suspects where it comes full circle.
Right. Now, I didn't have a car until my senior year, so I had to like bribe one of my friends. I was like, "We have to go hunt down Funko Land." They're like, "Where is it?" I was like, 15 minutes that way. And I was like, they're like, "Yeah, but where?" I was like, "I don't know. I can see it from the highway." They're like, "We need to be a little more specific than that." So we did
just drive off the highway.
So even though like
passing the sign,
even though we
just dukes it, just dukes a hazard. It. We'll get there. It's fine.
So even though like we called the store and found their address and stuff, this was still before GPS and like MapQuest was still like, I don't know. So it was hard.
MapQuest was really sketchy when it first started.
Yeah, and it's still not that great. So we did find it, but I mean it was a hike. I remember it like literally we were all like starving. It was like 3 or 4 of us in the car, and we're just like, "Man, we got to get back before the dining room closes because we're like starving." Yeah. And it's like the sun's going down and stuff, and we're all just like starving. And we pull into Funko Land, and I'm just like, "I want to live here," but all my friends are like, "We got to go." I was like, "Damn it!" So we go in and immediately, of course, go to the
it's like the first time I got to Newbury Comics, my brother had diarrhea, so we had to just leave.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I was like, my dad had been telling me stories of Newbury Comics for like years because it was right next to his office, and I was out to lunch with like my grandparents and my brother, and we were right near his office. So I was like, "Oh, we got to go to Newbury Comics." And we like walk in the door, and my brother, he was a little kid at this point. Yeah. We walk in the door, and I was like, "This place is amazing." And he's like, "Oh, my stomach!" Oh.
Are we gonna have to edit this out?
No, he's fine.
He's fine.
Yeah.
He got over the diarrhea?
No, he's been having it for 20 years. He's this emaciated shell of a human being, just fused to the toilet seat. Oh, we have to bring all of his meals in there.
So I'm on a time limit. Not quite the constraint that you were on, but it's still a time limit nonetheless. And,
a physiology-based time limit.
So I, and of course I'm on a limited budget on just to top it all off because I'm a college kid. I've got no money, and I know that any money I do have is pretty much my food budget for like the next month. So I go in, and there is the very first game I see is Shining Force 3, and it's $35.
Nice.
I was like, oh my god, and it's like mint condition, and so I grab it.
Just run.
Because even at this point, I know
run out the door.
That game should not be $35. I know. There's like a list of games in my head that I need, and that was one of them. So I grab it, and then I'm like ready to just head out because I know my friends are waiting.
Without paying. Dine and dash.
But then as soon as I turn, I'm like, oh my god, it's Panzer Dragoon Saga. And it was like $25.
Wow.
I was like, oh, and it's like, totally mint condition.
Yeah.
This is mind-boggling. I don't know if I can afford both of these games. And then there was also Sonic Jam. And it was like $25. Well, right. But
yeah.
I mean, I want to say that at that point in my life, although, definitely with every year that passed in my life, I like diversified my video game knowledge a little bit. But at that point, I think I still thought that Sonic games were really, really good.
Sonic's like that friend that you had in high school that you go back years later and they're still exactly the same, and it's so uncomfortable. Like the only thing they can talk about is high school, and you're just like, yeah, that was a good time. Well, I got to go home to my house and my wife and my job. Well, maybe you don't say that. Maybe you are that guy. Your friends say that to you.
Although I didn't think of high school as a good time in my life, I don't think much changed since then. Yeah, I'm still...
here's the sad part of the story. It was my fault.
All of my stories are just sad. There's an element of depression in all of them. So I had these 3 games in my hand, and me being me, unable to make a decision, I just pull out the debit card and know full well that it might get rejected. Because that $75 or $80 is might be pushing it. And it went through, and I know that for the rest of the month, I can't eat. So Funko Land, man, has like really saved both of us at one point in our lives.
For some of our younger viewers, if they exist, and it's not just our friends repeatedly clicking on things.
At this point, I'm going to say that I do actually have more friends than views. So I've got some friends out there not pulling their weight.
Doing it.
Yeah, thanks guys. Really appreciate it.
Bastards.
Yeah. An hour and a half is asking a little much.
It is.
Yeah.
For all of our younger viewers, though, back in the day, there used to be other video game stores than GameStop, and they were all better too.
Yeah,
when I think about it. Funko Land, Electronic Boutique, Babbage's. Yeah, like they were
Although
all...
Babbage's was my least favorite of the group.
Well, I think Babbage's is kind of what became GameStop.
Yeah.
But they all sort of like bought each other up. Like I think Electronic Boutique...
Became also GameStop too, yeah.
Well, they all did. Yeah, Funko Land did too.
And then there was EBX. Why was it EBX instead of Electronics Boutique?
I don't know.
It's like
you can still occasionally find a Funko Land or an Electronic Boutique, but they are
really?
games. Yeah, they're GameStops, but they're in malls where there already is a GameStop, and there's some rule that you can't have 2 stores with the same name, so they just.
It's the rule of don't be stupid.
Yeah, it's seriously how many games are people fucking buying?
Well, and how long does it take you to walk to the other end of the mall?
Well, have you seen the average American?
Yes.
They don't want to walk anywhere. But yeah, it does suck because and it's. I try not to indulge in a lot of like back in my day kind of bullshit, but like it's hard to ignore that this was definitely better back in that time.
And even though prices have gotten more expensive, it's like now those game stores are sort of irrelevant because if you really want a game and you don't mind spending the money for it, just go on eBay. spend your $20. It'll be here in 2 days.
Yeah, seriously. For every once in a while, when there's something like dirt cheap and GameStop is just like dumping stock. I think I bought Sheeran the Wanderer the other day for the Wii for like $1.50 or something like that. Yeah. Every once in a while I'll find something half decent at GameStop, but like everything else, it's Amazon. Like you can get day one shipping for $1, which unless you live in a GameStop, you're going to spend more than $1 gas driving there. Like,
yeah. And I already pay for Amazon Prime, so it's release day delivery for free.
Free, yeah. And they're always cheaper. Yeah. Always.
Yep. And I got to say that the 2 or 3 times I've bought anything in a GameStop over the last 5 years, I think I've been disappointed for some reason or another. Like I try to buy a game and it's not in the shrink wrap, and then I got to peel the freaking sticker off the front. Yeah, and they
put these gross stickers and everything I buy on GameStop, I bust out the Goo Gone when I get home and I'm staring the case with the Q-tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always residue.
And there was that, I don't know if they still do it, but there was a moment in time where they would actually take the artwork out of the game, out of the case, and stick a yellow label right on the artwork. And so sometimes I get games from eBay, knowing full well that this is the case, and it's like the moment I open the game up, I'm like, I got to do this so I don't go crazy.
Yeah,
and it takes me 15 minutes to peel it off. So,
yeah. I mean,
I'm losing my mind just thinking about it.
I am also a creepy perfectionist in that way, but it's also just a practicality because if you have like gooey residue on your CD and DVD cases, it's gonna stick to the stuff around it, and then like every time you're grabbing something off the shelf, it's like, ew, what is that?
Yeah.
You lend it to somebody, and they're like, bleh, it's got like hair and shit stuck to it.
GameStop is, it's a store for the masses.
Yeah,
it's for people who don't collect games. It's like, I just want to play this game, and it's $5. I might as well buy it.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Yeah, and I very rarely. My best case scenario with GameStop is like a neutral experience. I get in, I get out, and I have to make minimal eye contact with other human beings.
Yeah.
Half the time, I get people telling me things that are patently untrue. Right. Or I get people trying to upsell me things I don't want.
Well, and you'd think that the clerks at a video game retailer would have at least the same amount of knowledge as we do, having never worked at a game store.
Or at least enough knowledge that they're not just
totally
like pulling shit out of their ass. Yeah. Like I think expecting the same amount as us might be a little much. But back in my more desperate days, I applied for jobs at GameStop,
I think I did too.
And like their application is pretty rigorous as far as like what you know about shit. Like they ask you a lot of questions.
And I don't want to shit on all GameStop employees.
No.
Because for a while I had friends that worked, or I made friends with people who worked there. I guess at the time it wasn't even GameStop, but there are people who were passionate about this industry, and that's might as well get a job at GameStop because I'm gonna like save a few bucks, even if I'm not making great minimum wage. I'm gonna save a few bucks on all my purchases. And I have found people at a lot of stores that are very knowledgeable. And they're not all the same, but for a lot of people, I think it's just a job.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and that makes total sense. I mean, it pays shit and they treat you bad. I would not imagine a lot of people would be clamoring for that position.
Yeah.
Especially if you can get it someplace else. Compared to our local store, that's entertainment, where like I've had people like. I've had the staff there like befriend me, like come hang out with me sometime. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not bothering you by like being in here and asking questions.
So about That's Entertainment, without getting into their personal lives, I do want to say that you can tell that that's a quality store because some of the people that have been there for like over a decade.
Yeah, and I can't imagine it pays great. So
no, you get a discount. You get a discount on the stuff that you love, and you get to talk shop all day long.
Yeah.
I would love to work there.
And they're usually smiling too. Like compared to the people that you see in a lot of other places where they're just like.
What I love about walking in there is you immediately know whose music is playing.
Yeah, that is true. You're like, oh, so and so is in charge of the jukebox
it's
today.
Their turn right now. Yeah. Yep. Always funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're always complaining about each other's music too.
Oh yeah.
We love you guys.
Yeah. It's good times.
There is a little more to my Panzer Dragoon Saga story.
All right, yeah, sorry I interrupted you.
No. That was great. It was way more interesting.
That's a pretty decent story.
So it was near the end of my junior year where this was all happening, the fight with the roommate. And I think that's why my RD allowed me just to move into the room, because he wasn't going to move somebody in for just like a month. So of course I'm trying to play Sonic Jam, I'm trying to play Shining Force 3 and Panzer Dragoon Saga. And when you try to play 3 games at once, you're not going to get really deep into any of them. So I always got a little bit sad when it came to like summer vacation, because I liked school a lot, because you got to like live on your own.
You were the Harry Potter of your university.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were awesome, and they've always taken good care of me. But when
must be nice.
When I got home, listen, your dad bought you one of Gamelon.
He did.
My dad doesn't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know what it was either. He had to call me.
But he called you.
He did. Oh. He did. Well, I do the same to him. He's always looking for He's big into like old timey animation, so I always give him a call when I find stuff.
So I remember not getting far into the game, and then going home for summer break, and just kind of like, not like locking myself in my room, but kind of the equivalent of just being like,
being locked into the room under the stairs.
Like, I miss my friends
Hedwig.
Right. I miss my friends from school. I don't get to do drugs at home. This is total bullshit.
I'm picturing you like at your kitchen table, like shooting up, and your mom's like, "Bryan, what are you doing?" You're like, "Stop playing a rule trip on me, Mom." And you just storm out and fall into the yard because you're tripping balls.
And you haven't done a lot of drugs, have you?
No.
Okay. I don't think that's something to be sad about. You still have all your faculties. So I remember just really getting absorbed into Panzer Dragoon Saga, and just, it occupied my life for like a couple days, and every moment of that game, and I went back and I played some of it recently, and I do want to play the entire thing again. It's just a great feeling you get from it. What sucks is that when I went back, I'm like, oh, the camera kind of sucks, and oh, this isn't that great, and why is the aiming kind of like janky? And but at the time, I don't remember thinking any of those things. I remember just thinking, this is a beautiful game, and it has a lot of heart, and I'm in love with these characters from the get-go. And kid you not, I did drink at home, even though I wasn't doing drugs. I cried at the end. And because it had this kind of never-ending...
Was that tying into the drinking in some way?
Well, yes. Yeah. I'm not an emotional guy until I have a few shots of vodka.
No, and you're one of those guys.
Yeah. Well, I'm not until I hit a level, and then like I'm crying with my friends. I'm like, why did I get this drunk?
God, you're that guy. Everybody loves that guy, at the party, the weepy drunk.
I'm actually not that guy, because I like to drink alone more than anything.
And that's why, because when you hit a certain level, you're just like, all right, this is the 8th beer. Oh, God. Yeah. It's empty. It's so empty.
I learned at an early age that like I'd rather just drink alone and not make a fool of myself. And I wake up and like the lamp's on the floor and like TV's missing. What happened here last night? So anyway, it was sort of something that like I had a bad experience at school, and then my RD, I wish I remembered his name, man, because like he's ingrained in my brain, but like I have no real recollection.
No higher accolade than getting name dropped on this show.
Right.
Everybody wants to be associated with it.
He just made like a tough time in my life like a lot more tolerable.
Yeah.
And then it was even something that I got to take home from school with me to like make again another transition that wasn't so awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. And so Panzer Dragoon Saga definitely goes down as like one of my favorite games ever. And I say that I want to go back and play it again, but like I said, I feel like I'm just going to tarnish the memory. So, and I think that kind of goes like along when I was saying like this speaks to the way we deal with like relationships. I have a lot of fond memories of a lot of like exes, and like even crazy one night stands that were like really passionate, and like we thought like something bigger was going on than it was. I like to remember those things fondly, because when those people get back in touch with you, like the reality sort of sets in, and you're like, wow, this person has really bad camera controls. This person has really low res textures.
Yeah, I was going to say these graphics are not as attractive as I once thought.
This game did not age well. So and that's why like
why do I keep bumping into walls?
and that's why like it's almost mind-boggling. Like why do I build a collection of games that I almost don't want to go back to play again? You know, I like to know that they're there in case I need them.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want them.
Okay. Yeah.
See,
you know,
I told you it was going to be a little all over the place.
Well, I have a short and uplifting story to go. Well, yeah. This is a.
That's good. I only have one more anyway, so
Okay.
Make it as short or as long as you want.
Okay. So, I have actually gone on record, and maybe this article hasn't been published yet. It was a while ago, but that last issue of GameSpite Quarterly, or GameSpite, has been a little held up in the presses. But I have gone on record as saying I kind of think House of the Dead might be the best series in video games.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before.
Yeah, because all of the games are good to great, like even the spin-offs. It's very easy to pick up and play. You know, it's fun. It's changed enough without changing in a way that's it's changed things to keep it dynamic, but not in a way that like totally messes everything up.
Okay.
And I don't think there are a lot of other series. I mean, there are definitely plenty of better games than any of the House of the Dead games, but as a series, pretty solid.
Are you trying to say that when you start a series with low expectations, then you really can't fault it for not raising your expectations?
I guess. I mean, I used to
point?
play House of the Dead in an arcade a couple towns over from me, the original one, and I had a blast with that. I used to go there with my friends and just like play for like 20 minutes, because then you run out of quarters, because it was like $1 per play or something.
Right?
Yeah. It was one of the big like projection screen ones too.
Nice.
Anyway, so this will tie back around, but my college girlfriend had no experience with video games before she met me. Like, she had never even, barely had even seen any of them, never mind actually like played anything. So no conception whatsoever.
Okay.
And so it was kind of interesting. I mean, I never felt like you must play video games with me when we're together, but I was like, oh, this is, a part of my life. It's probably my major hobby. Like, would you like to try some of this? And, she was a good sport about it sometimes. But it was fascinating to watch, an adult who had never had any interaction with this, and who's still, young enough that interested in new things.
Sure.
I would imagine if it was somebody like my grandfather or something, like, experience would have been slightly different. But it was kind of fascinating to watch her like get a handle on. I remember like the first time we ever played a game, she was like sitting there just like giggling, because she's like, I'm touching this button and something on the screen is moving. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the downside of that, of course, is that like if you don't have those kind of motor skills down, like the concept of your body doing something and influencing like a distant object is very foreign. If like, it's a very weird, very modern concept. They've actually done some like physiological studies about this kind of thing, but it's very odd. And so, if you're an adult, like, that's a hard idea to wrap your mind around.
Sure.
So she, for the most part, never really had, like platformers or, any kind of thing like that down very well. But one of the games that we used to play, I had a Dreamcast, and I had House of the Dead 2. And that made a lot more sense, because you've got a gun, you point the gun at the screen, you pull the trigger, and it, you shoot things on the screen. It's very, it's very intuitive. There's not a like, okay, hold the shoulder button to run and any of that shit. It's, you just point, you pull the trigger, and stuff happens. And she, really enjoyed that. And it's also kind of like a chaotic, crazy game, and I think she kind of enjoyed that kind of thing too. So we would play that together sometimes, or, she would just sit and play it by herself other times.
That's impressive. You know when you've made a breakthrough when they actually want to play it without you.
Yeah. I mean, I would usually be around. It would be like, killing time while she was in my dorm room or something. But I remember there was one time when we were at my parents' house, and I had brought my Dreamcast there, and I had set it up for her in the basement, and I had to go like do some chores or something, just whatever. But she was like, okay, I'm gonna just like, there was no timetable on it. She could just go through the whole game. And I remember coming down, and she was fighting the last boss, and died and lost no more continues, no more
Yeah. lives.
So it was game over. And she got the big game over sign, and she's like, "Oh, how do I keep going?" And I was like, "Well, you don't. You're done. Like you died. You got to start over." And she's like, "From the beginning?" And I was like, "Yeah, from the very beginning." And she's like, "Oh my God." She's like, so it's all just gone, all that. And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, I feel really empty right now. And she looks at me and she's like, "I understand why you get this way sometimes." And it was this wonderful moment of like shared understanding, because she would see me playing games and like getting really mad, and like sometimes I'm not a particularly temperamental guy, but we all have our moment where it's like, "Why won't this just work?" Like,
I scream at games constantly.
Yeah, I used to be worse. I've gotten a lot better about it. It's pretty rare these days, but occasionally, the expletives will sneak out, and or like her kind of situation, you lose and you have to redo a ton of stuff, and you just feel like defeated. You just collapse. And there's this wonderful moment of understanding. Like, I think I gave her a big hug, and I was like, "You're starting to see, we get each other now." And it's fun. That was kind of this like a bonding moment for us, like, and a very understanding moment for her. And we, years later, we ended up breaking up, but like we still hang out sometimes. And actually, every time there's a new like House of the Dead, I was like, you have to come play this with me. It'll be fun.
So have you guys sat down with two keyboards and played Typing of the Dead?
No, I want to though. I keep trying to find it. It's kind of like it's just that side of expensive. I mean, you can get a full set for probably $50, I would say, something like.
I had the keyboard and the game. I basically been watching for roughly a year, and I think I finally got both of them. And I think both of them brand new, the keyboard and the game, for like $35.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where you just grab it when you can.
Yeah, I would like to. I haven't been. If I really wanted it, I would probably be more attentive to trying to track it down. But it's one that I would like to find, because I think she'd get a kick out of that.
So I've been typing all my life, but I've never actually learned to type properly. So the game drives me crazy. I'm constantly like looking down at my hands and like trying to type really fast and looking up, and you can totally miss stuff. Like there are certain things, like when somebody throws like a dagger at you have to hit like K or something really fast, and if like you're looking down typing something else,
you're gonna miss it.
You don't even know. Plus, like any of the like the bonus health items or the coins or whatever in the background, that you have to be really fast on that too. So you have to actually learn to type to play this game well.
Yeah.
So there's a story out there, and this might be publicized. I don't know. Or maybe
copyright infringement.
Or maybe this is just somebody's parent that I know. Like I can't remember where I know.
Suddenly,
the story
all
from.
of our podcasts or all our shows disappear. You'll know what happened.
Right. So there's a story, and it might be my story. It might be someone else's. I just have no idea where the story came from. Somebody's mom who never played video games before was a secretary and had could type like 70 words a minute, just like really fast. Played the game, sat down one sitting, nailed the whole thing, did it like flawlessly from beginning to end. Played it, didn't die once, no problems. I'm like, wow, that's really a game that shows that like where like gaming skills have nothing to do with the completion. Like if you're a good typer, you are good at this game. Period.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'd be curious to play this with my ex, because I think she probably types faster than me. So it would be. I mean, I'm relatively quick, but it would be interesting to see. She could be the the primary player for once.
Yeah. You mentioned playing games in arcades.
Yep.
So I do. I definitely. I think the first time I saw House of the Dead was in the arcade.
Yeah.
And man, that was quite the experience seeing that for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Because I'd seen like gun games before. Like I think there was like Area 51 by Midway.
Yeah.
And like
they
always had the. Like what was that police officer training ones?
What was that Aerosmith game?
Revolution
X. Yeah.
They were always kind of crappy ones, like even Lethal Enforcers,
or the Terminator game,
T2, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But none of them were like particularly very good.
No.
And so this one came out and it had like the horror genre vibe and just dark, gritty graphics and everything moved fast and it was like really 3D. Like Revolution X and all those were like more sprite based.
Yeah.
So that was a turning point for me. I was like, oh, I actually really like being in the arcade when I see something like this. But a game that really grabbed me and an ex-boyfriend of mine was Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, so it's kind of funny because I remember like the real turning point when it came to arcades versus home consoles was probably like roughly the Super Nintendo era when Street Fighter 2 finally came home to consoles, and it was like pretty arcade perfect, you know. And you started getting Mortal Kombats and things. You're like, wow, you know, I don't need to go to arcades. I can play these things at home. But there's still a level of excitement when you go to an arcade and you're like, you got your quarters lined up, and there's other people watching you play. And no matter how close to arcade perfect home ports can get, nothing replicates that huge screen with the sound of the speakers, because arcade speakers have a very distinct sound that doesn't get replicated well at home. And it's just, the whole vibe just makes me smile. There's always like, when I think of these games, there's always like a pinball arcade, like pinball machine, like clanking around in the background too. That just kind of sets the whole tone.
There's those shitty like ticket games, the skee ball and stuff.
right. And it's all part of the experience. You know, there's no sunlight creeping in at all. These are just getting artificial lights from all different directions, from all different colors. It's
there's like a slight smell of mildew.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I remember when I was a
like
kid,
shitty pizza.
I remember when I was a kid, you could still smoke in arcades.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, so there's like even that residue left over, because smoking in an arcade just never goes away.
No.
You know, there's like something left over that's just not awesome.
Yeah. Well, smoking in any building is going to leave something there.
Right. That poor house I lived in Tennessee. I smoked everything in that building.
You feel like a zucchini rolled up, like it's blazing.
We used apples.
Yeah.
So Marvel vs. Capcom 2, my ex and I, we used to go to the movies a lot, and so there's always like a little arcade room. While you're waiting for your movie to start, you know, you could always go there and hang out and play. And we used to play that like all the time. And I, as good as I am, I think at video games sometimes. This was his game. You know, and he'd make me play with him. And I was like, dude, you know you're just going to kick my ass. I'd rather stand behind you and watch you play somebody and, like, kick somebody's ass who totally didn't expect you were going to be this good. And that happened quite a few times, too. And I just have, like, the greatest memories of that game. And then, of course, when it came to consoles, like, we had to have it. He was always intentionally the polar opposite of me. You know, he's like, oh, you're from Boston, so you like the Red Sox. And I was like, I don't like sports. And he goes, I don't care. I like the Yankees. And I'm like, you're from Tennessee. What the fuck do you care about the Red Sox or the Yankees? And he goes, I like the Yankees. They're my favorite team. I'm like, you don't watch sports either. So like, when I was obsessed with PlayStation, I'm still kind of obsessed. This was like the PS2 era. He was like, well, I have to be obsessed with Xbox. I was like, you suck. So he had Marvel vs. Capcom for Xbox. I had it for PS2, and it didn't matter where we were. We were playing this game all the time, and no matter how hard he tried to teach me how to play this game, like, it just wasn't happening. But it was just those fond memories of, like, being able to play together. And even when I got my PS3, you know, I had to download the HD port, and it's one of those things that, I mean, I have a lot of memories of this relationship. You know, he and I shared. We had the same taste in music, and we had the same taste in TV shows and movies and comic books, but nothing, I don't think, ever brought us together as much as video games did. You know, it's like I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and he'd be like over on the couch playing video games, and I'd get up and I'd just like go over and either join in or just watch him play. You know, and like have these big, long, deep talks in the middle of the night. And vice versa. He'd wake up and, you know, come hang out with me while I was playing. Tragically, I lost him 3 years ago. But I have these great memories of playing Okami on the PS2. And was it Resident Evil 4 was the other big one that, like, we just struggled to get through because it wasn't very good. No, of course, great game. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is like the defining game of that relationship. So I told you this was going to get sad. I'm sorry for making it sad, but it's important to me, and I think when you talk about video games and relationships and all that, it's impossible to ignore that one for me. Please,
that makes sense.
Please tell me you can bring this back up.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. You got to save the day.
Yeah, I know. So I've got I've got a couple more, but this one I was saving for just such an occasion.
All right, good. This is going to be our grand finale.
Yeah.
We're gonna end on a high note.
So Earthbound, I would assume a lot of people that is a fairly defining game. I got it when it first came out. Again, I was really into RPGs.
Yep.
I didn't quite get it though, and I think it was at a time when I really liked RPGs, but before I really understood like how to play them.
Okay.
Like I thought I had come up with the idea of grinding for experience. I was like, this is so nobody has ever thought of this before. But if you just keep fighting random encounters and then you save afterwards, you're much stronger when you go to fight the boss. I'm a genius.
I love that you thought you came up with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I never quite got Earthbound, and like I appreciated the like poo-poo humor at the time probably, but it was a struggle to get to the end, and it was like off and on playing it for a while. But then fast forward years later, I replayed it, and I found it like a really revelatory experience. I mean, I had heard over the years that people really liked this game, and I was like, it's okay, but replaying it, it's really not like any other game, and I would say its predecessor and its sequel are the same kind of way. It has this very odd tone to it, which it's a silly game, but it doesn't downplay hardships. Mm-hmm. Like especially Mother 3 has some very, very dark moments, but even Earthbound, there's some shit going down in those games. But there's always this feeling of like support, that the game is supporting you. It's not like it's not a hard game. It has occasional difficulty spikes, especially in the beginning before you've got like a more rounded party. Mm-hmm. There's some stuff that can go bad if you're not paying attention.
I mean, my brief experience with Earthbound is that it went bad very quickly, very often. There's some tough stuff, especially like before you get your second party member. There's like those exploding trees that will one hit kill you. There's the mushrooms that'll mess up your controls, and you can get surrounded. There's a couple the
bosses.
Mushrooms suck.
Yeah,
and the ninjas by the arcade,
the gang members. Yeah, there's a couple of places where like especially bosses where you're kind of going to be like right down to your last few hit points. Like you got to really make sure, because you don't have a lot of psychic powers and a lot of HP built up by that point. Yeah. But it's not like a super hard game, but it's not like the game is pulling punches for you. It's more just like there's always this tone of like, that's okay, like keep going. You can make it through the hard times. Like you'll be all right, and you're growing. Like look how far you've come. There's always these scenes where people kind of talk about the past, but not in a like nostalgic like oh, Thundercats, cool, man. Like it's this kind of like look how you've grown, look how far you've come. Yeah. And so it's one of those games that I'll replay every time, every couple of years, and it's usually like I'll be in a specific kind of mood where I'm like, I need like that Earthbound affirmation. It's a very without sugarcoating any of the problems. It's just this kind of very supportive, like a supportive dad or something. Just it's okay, you got this one. I know you can do this. It's it after replaying it a couple times, I was like, wow, this game is really phenomenal. This is definitely, one of my favorite games. I'm actually really excited. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's been in the works for quite a number of years. There's a fan group making a Mother 4.
Really?
Yeah, because...
I'm not surprised.
I can't remember his name, but the creator of Earthbound has said, Mother 3, that was the end. Like, I'm done with this series. I've said what I've wanted to say, and I think that's fair. Yeah. It's better to stop when you're done than to keep going when you don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. So this fan group is putting together Mother 4, and it's supposed to come out sometime this year, like in the not too distant future. And they said they're not even going to like make a big thing about it. They're just going to like put it up on their website one day, and they'll email some people that are on their mailing list.
Is there a way to get this on an actual like SNES card or anything?
No. It's PC, and it's not even like it's not emulated either. It's going to be its own like downloadable executable file. But I've seen the screenshots. I mean, it looks identical. They've really nailed the graphics and the gameplay. Nice. I would imagine some of their downplaying it is so that they don't get slammed by like a Nintendo cease and desist.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is too just kind of embracing that like there's no need to be all in people's faces about this. This is a real like passion project.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised that they haven't gotten shut down because I know that a lot of other startups like that have.
Yeah, well, you think about how high profile the Mother 3 translation patch and the Mother 3 guide. I mean, they made and sold like for profit a like bound,
So if people aren't making money off of it, if it's just available for a free download, I mean, are they charging for it? They must be.
No, it's everything's free.
Wow.
Yep. And I mean, it could be if. God, I wish I had written his name down, but the
right here.
There it is. It's right. That it could be, because he has a lot of direct control over this project, over these, games. It could just be that he said, "No, I'm fine with it. Let him do it."
Right.
I don't know the exact reasoning, but
if anything, it's only going to like muster up sales for like the WiiWare Earthbound.
and like
like,
Smash
let me
Brothers
check out the
and
original
stuff.
one. Right.
But it's as games kind of progress and the tone of most video games seem to be kind of like, we gotta shoot everybody and cause all these problems. It's nice to see a game that's just kind of trying to help you grow, I guess.
I don't want you to have to start ranking things, but where in your top 10 list would Earthbound fall?
Pretty close to the top. I actually do have a top 10 list that I've written down. I don't have it with me right at the moment, though.
Yeah. So in top 3?
No, it wouldn't be the top 3. It would be top 10. I think it's in the top 10.
Yeah.
Probably closer to the middle. A 6 or a 7 maybe.
Do you know off the top of your head what your 1, 2, and 3 are?
Yeah.
Now I gotta ask.
Yeah, it's Symphony of the Night.
Okay.
Final Fantasy. Which one? I kind of go back and forth between two, but I'm going to say Final Fantasy VI and then Final Fantasy Tactics.
6 is. I don't know why I'm so interested in 6 right now, but that is a game that I want to play probably more than any other game right now.
You should do it then. It's pretty easy.
That's what I. Oh, is it?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to play it. I'm saying you just get an emulator or buy the.
I'm just gonna get the actual cartridge.
Okay,
me. I
you
gotta
do that too.
Yeah,
it's not now that they've had a few other versions of it released. It's not super expensive.
No, I've seen it for definitely reasonable prices,
like $30, something like that. $30-$40.
30-40, yeah. Just the beautiful SNES graphics, man. I'm such a huge fan.
Yeah, the Game Boy Advance version has some extra stuff in it, though.
Yeah,
which is hit or miss, but there's a couple extra bosses. They're okay.
Right on. I think I'd have to. I think if I got the Game Boy Advance version, I'd have to play it on my Super Nintendo. You know how they have the Game Boy adapter.
I don't think can you play Game Boy Advance. Oh, that's a third party thing.
It's
though,
a
right?
different thing. Yeah, it's not the Super Game Boy.
Not the Super Game Boy. That won't do it. That doesn't even play. I think that doesn't even play Game Boy Color games.
It doesn't. No, but they do. I'm shocked and thrilled that they have a Game Boy Advance player for the for the SNES, because it's remarkably hard to find a Game Boy player for the GameCube.
Yeah,
they're all missing the disc.
Yeah, which is kind of useless.
Totally useless.
Yeah, I bought mine right when it came out because I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm playing these on a TV."
I had one when it came out. It was awesome.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it actually makes the GameCube look a little better. I think.
A little taller.
Yeah.
Stand up straight.
Yeah.
GameCube. Mike, what are you going to be playing this week?
Well, I'm going to finish
2.
Danganronpa.
Yeah.
I'm finishing we're finally at the end of our Dark Souls run, John and I, in Dark Souls 2.
We're not inviting John back until you guys are far away from Dark Souls.
He told me he wants to come back, but we got to talk about Dark Souls.
Yeah, maybe
when Scholar of the First Sin comes out.
Maybe it can be a week that I'm sick and you can take my
we
place.
We can just do the two of us.
Right, I'll be in the other room just in bed.
Yeah. So other than that, I don't know if I'm going to try to finish Adventure Time, see if it gets any better.
Yeah.
Or if I'll try to move on to something else. See, the nice thing about buying games for work is then I can just borrow them if they're around.
Right.
And I've noticed that there's a ton of stuff that we still have kicking around. I've been thinking it might be time to take on like a big RPG though, like a Skyrim or a Xenoblade or something.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Sounds like work. I think the biggest RPG I'm going to be taking on is Newtopia.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can call it an RPG, which RPG light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
RPG-esque.
Yeah, I'm totally not sure if I ever beat that game. I'm 99% sure that I haven't. So maybe that'll be an episode of Backlogged. But I'd like to probably combine Newtopia 1 and 2 into one episode.
2's supposed to be a lot better.
Yeah, I've played minimal amounts, but I do like it already more. So, but as far as this week's concerned, I'm gonna be playing less and organizing more. I actually just ordered. This is great. I ordered end label stickers for all my N64 games.
Nice.
If you've seen the ones that they have for sale, obviously third party, they look. I haven't gotten them yet. They're going to be here any day.
Yeah.
They look super professional.
Okay.
And they're all based on the box art, so they look really nice. And what you do is for $20, you get every single one ever made.
Wow.
Right. So
okay.
So I can just put it into a folder, and anytime I buy an N64 game, I just open the folder and get the label and stick it on.
Nice.
And because it's one of those weird things. I think the Jaguar, the N64, the Super Famicom, none of them have end labels.
Yeah.
And it's irritating.
Yeah. That's interesting that you're okay with sort of defacing your games, but I guess if it's, if they're really professional looking.
Yeah, it was sort of tough to come to terms with that because I can't imagine ever doing that for anything else.
Yeah.
I hate defacing my games. I hate even my consoles. I don't like putting like stickers on. But for some reason I've seen these and they just look so good, and now I can't live without them. Not that I have them. So right now I'm living without them.
I can't though.
Right.
Out the window.
So this is I guess technically our Valentine's Day episode.
It is. So
do you have any awesome plans for Valentine's Day,
Yeah,
Mikey?
I'm going to be working. I got to work that day.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I do not think the library is going to be the hotbed of romance that your restaurant will be, though.
Who cares? What are we talking about
Yeah,
this for?
all right.
This is ridiculous.
Let's wrap this shit up.
Seriously. So listen, we've said this before. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you want us to talk about, we'll do anything at all. Leave it in the comments until we get our email set up. Or you can email us at gamingwithoutparole@gmail.com. But do whatever you want to.
Sure. We're not going to lay a rule
It's your
trip on
life.
you. Go for it.
So for Valentine's Day and for Gaming Without Parole, I'm Brian Paul.
I'm Mike Zeller.
And we'll see you next week.